Their foramen magnum, as you can see here, is at the back of the skull. So that is a genetic trait.
There are discoveries that leave scientists wishing they had never started digging, and the DNA recovered from Peru's 3,000-year-old elongated skulls is one of them. What began as a routine study of an ancient cultural practice quickly twisted into a chilling mystery that shakes the core of everything we believe about human origins. The genetic code of the Paracas people contains anomalies and unexpected markers that have stunned researchers around the world. Here's the part no one tells you. These findings don't just point to a missing chapter of history. They hint that our understanding of who we are might be completely wrong. A puzzle frozen in time for over 3 millennia begins beneath the sun-scorched desert. There, archaeologists uncovered a maze of deep, carefully engineered underground chambers known as chulpas. These weren't basic burial pits. They were monumental, stone-lined tombs designed to outlive the ages, and within them, arranged with unsettling precision, were more than 300 mummified bodies. But these were no ordinary remains. The first thing that shocked the team was the skulls. Long, unnervingly stretched craniums, some extended to such an extreme that they seemed to defy every rule of human anatomy. In an instant, centuries of assumptions about the ancient people of this region were thrown into disarray. Inside the tombs, the strangeness only intensified. Each elongated skull was carefully wrapped in layer after layer of the most extraordinary textiles ever found from that period. The fabrics were vibrant, intricate, and crafted with a skill far beyond what archaeologists expected from a culture this old. These individuals weren't buried with simple tools or everyday pottery. They were sent into the afterlife with ceremonial obsidian knives, sharper than steel, and dazzling jewelry made of gold and rare shells. This wasn't the resting place of common villagers. These were the graves of an elite ruling class: kings, priests, warriors, people who wielded immense power and commanded deep respect. Radiocarbon dating only deepened the surprise. The remains dated back roughly 2,800 to 3,000 years, pushing the timeline of sophisticated civilization in this region back far earlier than previously believed. These tombs belong to the Paracas culture, a society so ancient that it predates the mighty Inca by more than 2 millennia, and even comes before the mysterious Nazca people who later carved the giant desert lines. The Paracas weren't a minor tribe. They were one of the earliest and most advanced cultures in the Andes. And yet, their legacy is remembered for one extraordinary feature: those strange, elongated heads. The central question haunted every researcher: were these skulls simply shaped by a painful cultural tradition? Or did their bizarre structure hint at something deeper, something about the true identity of these individuals? Because the skulls weren't just long. Their entire structure was different. What many missed early on were claims that some skulls held up to 25% more cranial volume than a normal human, and weighed as much as 60% more. That detail matters. Head binding can change shape, but it cannot make a skull larger or heavier. It bends bone. It doesn't create new mass. That inconsistency alone shook the conventional explanation. But it got stranger. When scientists examined the skulls in detail, they noticed many lacked the sagittal suture, the seam that normally divides the 2 parietal bones along the top of a human skull. In regular humans, this suture fuses during childhood, but in several of the most extreme Paracas skulls, it appeared the suture had never existed at all. Instead, the skull formed a single, solid plate. Yes, craniosynostosis, a birth defect, can cause unusual skull fusion, but for an entire elite population to show this feature naturally, that defied statistical logic. It suggested something inherited, something genetic, something that set these people apart. This was the moment when the easy explanation, head binding, began to crumble. A darker, more unsettling possibility crept in. What if these individuals weren't shaped into this form? What if they were born this way? The deeper researchers dug into this ancient mystery, the more everything began to twist into something far stranger than anyone had prepared for. What started as a simple archaeological puzzle suddenly became a maze of biological riddles and scientific contradictions. And at the center of it all lay a single, unsettling possibility. These so-called Paracas skulls weren't just shaped differently. They might have developed differently. People online love to sensationalize the eye sockets and unusual skull shape, calling them alien-like, but specialists have repeatedly shown that features like the orbit size fall within normal human variation. And the dramatic elongation? Yes, it's unnatural, but not impossible. Artificial cranial deformation can reshape a skull in dramatic ways, and mainstream researchers agree that the overall morphology still fits within the human category. But that's only where the controversy begins. Even among academic circles, certain structural oddities simply refused to disappear. Reports kept surfacing about increased cranial volume. Measurements suggested greater bone mass. And then came the biggest red flag: the complete or near-complete absence of the sagittal suture in several specimens. Modern scans added even more confusion. Instead of showing distortion patterns typical of forced skull reshaping, CT images revealed an interior architecture that looked naturally elongated, a uniformly dense bone matrix rather than the compression or stress markers you'd expect from binding. In fact, the bone appeared thicker, tougher, and more uniform than usual. These weren't internet rumors. These were anomalies staring directly back at the experts. So if the skulls were unmistakably human, yet their growth patterns followed some strange, unfamiliar developmental path, then what exactly was the Paracas bloodline? To finally cut through the speculation, researchers had to go deeper, beyond bone structure, beyond anatomy, straight into the genetic code. They needed the one record of truth that can't be faked: DNA. Recovering genetic material from something that's 3,000 years old should have been almost impossible. Normally, DNA decays rapidly after death, but the Paracas desert, with its bone-dry climate and salt-rich earth, acted like nature's own preservation chamber. It slowed biological decay almost to a halt. That environmental miracle allowed scientists to collect fragments from bone dust carved out of the skull cores, from well-preserved strands of ancient hair, bits of dried tissue. Even entire teeth, the holy grail of ancient DNA work. The extraction process looked like a scene out of a forensic crime lab. One stray breath or fleck of modern DNA could contaminate everything, so researchers wore full sterile suits, sterilized every tool, and followed strict cleanroom procedures. Their target? Mitochondrial DNA, the genetic thread passed from mother to child. Unlike nuclear DNA, mtDNA is tough, plentiful, and excellent for tracing deep ancestral lines. To avoid any chance of error, identical samples were shipped to multiple independent labs in the U.S. The scientific world waited for the results, expecting something simple and predictable. The Paracas skulls should have matched Native American haplogroups, the genetic families linked to the ancient migrants who crossed the Bering Land Bridge thousands of years ago. But when the first reports arrived, they didn't bring clarity. They brought chaos. What the labs found shouldn't have been possible. Some sequences carried mutations that didn't match any known human, primate, or animal DNA on file. One lab director supposedly admitted he had no idea what he was looking at. And the ancestry connections that did show up sent shockwaves through the field. Instead of matching the lineages of local Andean tribes, The mitochondrial DNA pointed toward people from regions thousands of miles away, the Black Sea area, the Caucasus Mountains, parts of the Middle East, even ancient Mesopotamia. These weren't tiny statistical flukes. They were clear, repeated markers. Picture this: skulls buried on Peru's Pacific coast for 3 millennia carrying genetic signatures linked to the heartlands of early Old World civilizations. How could that be? How could lineages from Europe and the Near East appear in pre-Columbian Peru long before transoceanic voyages were even supposed to be possible? It didn't just poke holes in the traditional timeline, it tore the timeline open. If the Paracas people carried overseas lineage, if advanced textile techniques appeared suddenly, if their culture grew out of nowhere, then what was really happening here? This is where the debate jumps from archaeology into something far more controversial: the possibility that these people weren't isolated at all, that they weren't merely an unusual tribe, that they may have been descendants of a much older and much wider civilization, a civilization that didn't vanish but was erased. This idea forms the backbone of diffusionism, the theory that ancient cultures didn't evolve independently but rather inherited their breakthroughs from a single mother civilization lost to time. And this is why names like Atlantis and Lemuria resurface whenever the Paracas story is told. Whether one believes these legends or not, the Paracas findings, their DNA, their sudden appearance, their strange physical traits, pour gasoline on a fire that refuses to burn out. And the further you follow this trail, the clearer it becomes. This mystery isn't winding down. It's only just stepping out of the shadows. According to alternative history traditions, our world once hosted a civilization that was both technologically brilliant and spiritually evolved, a society far ahead of anything we can imagine. Then, in a single moment of unimaginable destruction, a colossal flood, a sudden polar shift, or even the impact of a cosmic object, it vanished, wiped clean, lost, but not entirely. The story claims that a few survivors, carrying rare knowledge and an unusual genetic signature, escaped the catastrophe. They scattered across the globe, becoming the architects of early high cultures, the civilizing heroes remembered in the myths of Egypt, Mesopotamia, and astonishingly, the distant coasts of Peru. And within this narrative, the Paracas nobles, with their foreign DNA markers and elaborate, almost regal burial traditions, are cast as the living remnants of this ancient world. Not wanderers, not newcomers, but guardians of a nearly forgotten legacy. Their true homeland, according to this view, now sleeps beneath the waves of the Atlantic or the vast silence of the Pacific. Seen through this lens, head elongation takes on an entirely new meaning. Rather than a social fad, it becomes a deliberate mimicry, an attempt to replicate the natural skull shape of their revered ancestors, those survivors of the drowned mother culture. In this telling, the Paracas weren't just shaping their heads for beauty or status. They were signaling lineage, identity, authority. Their astonishing textiles, uncanny astronomical precision, and refined mortuary rituals aren't portrayed as isolated innovations, but as the last fading embers of a knowledge system passed down from a civilization that spanned oceans. This perspective paints the Paracas as a secluded remnant, a displaced nobility trying to preserve the final fragments of a worldwide network that collapsed into myth. It's a dramatic and unsettling interpretation, one that leads straight into one of the most heated conflicts surrounding the Paracas mystery, the accusation that academic institutions are working overtime to hide, dismiss, or bury data that challenges our accepted timeline. Some claim that the history we're taught is less a record and more a carefully curated narrative. And the Paracas DNA debate sits right in the crosshairs. Between verified scientific results and wildly imaginative theories, a storm of suspicion grows, fed by allegations of secrecy, missing samples, conflicting reports, and unexplained silences. For many, this tension is exactly what pulls them deeper. Because when official explanations leave gaps, conspiracy theories rush to fill them. So we're left with the essential question: who were the Paracas? Were they the descendants of a forgotten global civilization? Or is there a more grounded answer waiting beneath the layers of speculation? Share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear your take. And if you enjoy diving into the world's strangest historical puzzles, make sure to like and subscribe. There's plenty more ahead.